My name's Sheryl Jouvenat. I am a full-time ESL instructor at Metro Community College. I have an MA in Tesol. Tesol is teaching English to speakers of other languages, so it's a master's degree that focuses on teaching non-native speakers reading, writing, grammar, listening, and speaking. I started at MCC in 1999 as an adjunct instructor. Then I left for a number of years, and I came back in 2008. I continued to teach adjunct ESL classes, and then I was the educational consultant at the SARPE Academic Resource Center, which is now the Learning and Tutoring Center. Then I was hired full-time in 2012. My job before MCC began 21 years ago in 1994 when I decided to move to Taiwan to teach English as a foreign language. I moved there and I had a wonderful year teaching Chinese students how to speak English, and I came back, and from then I went to graduate school, and then I began teaching in intensive English programs and in community college programs in Houston, Texas, Los Angeles, upstate California, and then back to Omaha. So I've taught in a wide variety of programs with lots of different students from different backgrounds. I'm originally from Lincoln, Nebraska, but I had an unusual childhood in that I grew up in a bilingual household. My father was a refugee from Germany. After the war, he escaped East Germany, and he came to the United States for a better life. And so I grew up speaking German and English. That fueled me, I think, in many ways. I was always the kid who was friends with the international students in high school, and I always saw myself leaving Lincoln, Nebraska, and going to further corners of the world, right, to learn. So I got my bachelor's degree of science in secondary education at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I went and I taught in Seattle for a year, and then I decided to move on and go to Taiwan and teach there. And in 1997, I got my master's degree in Tesol, teaching English to speakers of other languages. One of my favorite teachers was during grad school. His name was Bob O'Prandy. I was living in Monterey, California, going to the Monterey Institute of International Studies, and Bob was from Brooklyn, and he was my ed psych instructor. And Bob was a very eclectic ex-hippie. He was an eclectic instructor. He was an ex-hippie. He knew lots of information about all the different methods of language learning throughout history. And he inspired me to be a fun, engaging instructor. One of my mentors was Norma Morehouse, who recently retired from Metro Community College. Norma was an excellent mentor. She cared about students. She had a vast knowledge of student services and advising. She was a person I could go to for professional advice, or if a student was having a personal problem, I could refer them to Norma, and she had a way with students where she could communicate really well. So I miss her terribly. I wish she were still here. She was a real benefit to the college. Personally, I'd say my father was a mentor because my father had extreme tenacity. He came to this country with no English, very little education. World War II wiped that out. And yet there he was, living the American dream, working hard. And so I'd say he was a professional mentor because he expected a lot. Children of immigrants, our parents have a lot of hope in us. And so they always remind us of what they didn't have and what we have. So I grew up with a deep sense of social justice and how important education is. So I'd say my dad was my mentor. I could say that I went into teaching because I failed my junior year chemistry class. I was on my way to becoming a doctor. But really, I chose teaching because I loved helping students. And I loved inspiring a love of learning. And so teaching was a natural field for me to fit into. I was very introverted as a child, so you might think, well, she was introverted. Why would she want to be up in front of a class of students? But actually, when I get in front of a class, I feel like I am a guide and I enjoy the interaction with students. So teaching has always been something that was very fulfilling for me because I help people. I got to Metro because I believe in the community college. I believe that education should be affordable, and I wanted to help students who were refugees or new immigrants to this country. What keeps me at Metro is the students. Our diverse population of students keeps me, it fuels me. I tell my students, really, this isn't a job. This is really fun for me. My teaching philosophy is that students learn best, whether it's English or mathematics or psychology, when they're actively engaged. When they feel a sense of ownership in the classroom. So my classes are collaborative. I encourage students to learn from each other. The other thing is that I believe in student-centered learning. So I want my students to be actively engaged. I want them to care about what they're learning, and I try to make those connections so they see what they're learning and how that connects to their future career or to their present lives. What motivates me are my students. What motivates me is the learning that occurs in my classroom. We have a lot of fun in my ESL classes. I believe that humor fuels learning as well. So what motivates me is the idea that I am making a difference in Omaha, Nebraska. I believe I'm part of a bigger global community. I feel it every day when I see my Sudanese, my Karen, my Guatemalan students. I see those close connections, and that it doesn't matter what country you're from, what language you speak, we're all part of this global community, and I feel it on a daily basis, and that's what motivates me and keeps me going back. I want my students to take away from my class that they are empowering themselves by learning English, by giving themselves the freedom to take classes. They are on their way to make a better life for themselves and their children. My students have taught me resiliency because my students come from difficult backgrounds. They've strived really hard to get here. And so my students always teach me how much education is of value. Technology plays an important part of all my classes. We have an online component to every book that we use, so my students can easily do the homework online and I can check it. Technology also allows me to bring in lots of different resources into my classroom, whether it's a movie clip or a TED Talk, and so it really enriches the environment of my classroom. My biggest passion is my family. I love being with my kids and my husband, and I get a lot of fulfillment from that. My greatest challenge is probably balancing work with home life, because I give a lot to my students, and I come in and I help students on my off hours or during my office hours, and yet I have a really fulfilling home life as well. I've got 3 daughters, 2 of which are becoming teenagers, and so sort of balancing work with home can be a challenge for me. What's next for me is I'd like to help with the Syrian refugees who are coming to this country. I'd like to work in some kind of volunteer capacity to help them integrate into the Omaha community. One of my favorite quotes comes from Amnesty International that says, "It's better to light a candle than curse the darkness." To me, that means be a positive force in the world. Do good work. I'm Sheryl Jouvenat. I'm an ESL instructor here at Metro Community College.